He thought he could control what people saw, every camera angle, every frame, a ticket to internet fame. But as he scrolled through the footage late one night, his heart stopped. Something moved where it shouldn't. Something watched. The reflections in the glass, the flickers in empty rooms, they weren't tricks of the light. Was it the house itself, or had someone, or something, been inside, recording him first? And if it could watch him, did it know him better than he knew himself? What if the content he craved was never meant to be captured? What if his obsession had already drawn a line he could never cross back? The screen blinked, paused, and there it was. A shadow that shouldn't exist, moving with purpose, and it stared straight into the lens and into him. The next morning, Ethan rewound the footage, desperate for a rational explanation. Every angle, every corner of his apartment seemed wrong. Small items moved slightly between shots. A chair that had been untouched now angled toward the wall. The sense of being watched gnawed at him. Was he losing his mind, or had something, or someone, entered his home unseen? And why did the cameras catch it, but his own senses didn't? Questions piled like shadows, thickening the air around him, each frame a puzzle with no solution. He couldn't ignore it. He needed to see who, or what, was behind the lens. As night fell again, Ethan set up more cameras, angles covering every doorway, every hallway, every blind corner. His obsession became a ritual. He whispered to himself, promising to catch the anomaly this time. And when the first flicker appeared on the monitors, a movement too fluid, too deliberate, he froze. Someone or something was learning, moving intentionally. The apartment no longer felt like his own. It had become a stage, and he was merely part of the performance. The footage grew stranger by the hour. Objects didn't just move, they seemed to anticipate his reactions. A book he had left on a shelf slid slightly as he looked away. A cup on the counter tilted just as he reached for it. He whispered into the dark, asking if someone was there, and the silence answered back with something heavier, something patient. The cameras captured it all, every calculated motion, yet it remained unseen by the naked eye. The house had a new occupant, invisible yet intimate, and Ethan's obsession was the invitation. By the end of the week, Ethan's apartment had become a labyrinth of cameras and wires. Sleep eluded him. Every beep, every shadow on the feed set his heart racing. He began questioning the reality of what he saw. Was the footage real, or a trick of exhaustion and paranoia? Then a new figure appeared in frame. He had never seen this man before, standing silently in the corner of his living room, watching, waiting. And for the first time, Ethan didn't just feel observed. He felt hunted. Ethan's paranoia deepened. Every sound felt amplified. Every flicker on the monitors made his pulse spike. The stranger in the hoodie appeared more frequently, moving silently through doorways, freezing when cameras caught him. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. And the more Ethan watched, the more he felt like a spectator of his own life. How long had this been happening before he even noticed? Could he trust what he saw, or had the obsession already warped reality itself? The line between footage and truth blurred with every passing hour. Late at night, Ethan heard whispers from empty rooms. He told himself it was exhaustion, but the voices repeated patterns from his own conversations. Every creak, every shuffle seemed intentional, as though someone knew his thoughts before he did. He began to question if the cameras were merely recording, or if they were somehow interacting with the house itself. And the stranger, was he a ghost, a hacker, or something else entirely? The questions felt dangerous, but he couldn't stop watching. Ethan set up a hidden camera in the kitchen, aiming to catch the stranger in action. Hours passed, and the footage revealed subtle, impossible movements, cups shifting on their own, shadows bending against the walls. He paused, rewound, and stared at the screen. The stranger was there, watching silently, almost as if he knew Ethan was observing him. every detail. Every twitch of movement felt like a message. What did he want? And why had the house, his sanctuary, become a trap? Maya tried to pull him back from the edge, but Ethan couldn't stop. He watched obsessively, documenting every anomaly. He began leaving notes for himself, sketching floor plans marking the stranger's movements. Each day the figure grew bolder, lingering longer in the frame as though aware of Ethan's every plan. The apartment had transformed into a stage, and the performance was deadly serious. Who was controlling whom? And was Ethan's own obsession the final act in a story he no longer controlled? Then it happened. A camera captured the stranger directly in front of Ethan's bedroom door. Still watching, for the first time, Ethan didn't just feel observed. He felt targeted. The air thickened, the walls seemed closer, and his pulse roared in his ears. He realized the house wasn't just haunted by shadows, it was haunted by intent. And the stranger wasn't just watching anymore. He was waiting for Ethan to make the next move. Wow, Ethan didn't sleep. The stranger had crossed an invisible line, no longer just flickers on screens, but standing in plain sight. Every camera angle revealed him closer, more deliberate, as if tracking Ethan's every breath. Maya begged him to stop, but he refused. He needed proof, a record of the impossible. The apartment had become a battlefield of observation, a game he could no longer control. The question hung in the air. Who was really hunting whom? The stranger moved with uncanny precision. He seemed to anticipate Ethan's every step, vanishing from one frame and appearing in another without explanation. Ethan's hands shook as he tracked him on monitors, realizing the man wasn't just present. He was orchestrating events. A cup tipped over. A light flickered, and the stranger's gaze always followed, even when he shouldn't have been visible. The lines between reality, footage, and obsession blurred into one terrifying equation. Maya tried to intervene, but the stranger's presence was magnetic, almost hypnotic. She felt watched even when Ethan wasn't nearby. When she glanced at one monitor, the stranger's eyes seemed to meet hers directly. Panic and confusion tangled with fear. Ethan's obsession had summoned consequences that were no longer theoretical. He had opened a door into something he could not close. The apartment, once a space of creation, had become a stage for an audience he could not control. Ethan made a mistake. He followed the stranger into a narrow hallway, thinking he could confront him. But the figure vanished. The cameras, however, caught him standing silently in the living room, watching Ethan's every move. Fear turned to dread. He realized the stranger didn't follow the rules of space, or time, or logic. This wasn't just a man. This was a force that had learned from him, mirrored him, anticipated him. And now, there was no hiding. The confrontation was silent, but deafening. Ethan stared at one monitor, then another, and realized the stranger was everywhere and nowhere. Every movement he made was anticipated. Every fear he felt recorded. And in that moment he understood the horrifying truth. The cameras hadn't just captured the stranger. They had summoned him. Ethan's obsession had drawn attention from a force that thrived on observation. And for the first time, he wasn't a creator. He was prey. Ethan woke to a world he no longer recognized. Clips from his hidden cameras were circulating online, shared, dissected, and dissected again. Comments speculated, staged, or supernatural. Is this real or deepfake? The stranger, once confined to his apartment, now haunted every screen. Every notification felt like a knock at the door. Fame had arrived, but it carried a weight far heavier than likes or views. Ethan realized too late. Virality doesn't forgive fear. It amplifies it. Across social media, the footage spread like wildfire. Fans debated, conspiracy theorists speculated, and some viewers claimed to have seen the stranger in their own homes. Ethan's private nightmare had become a global spectacle. He tried to reach out, to explain, to stop the spread. But algorithms don't care about warnings, and once curiosity takes hold, it grows uncontrollable. His obsession had birthed a digital contagion, and now he was trapped within it. News outlets caught wind of the story. The hidden camera horror, viral nightmare or hoax, headlines screamed. Ethan watched as journalists dissected his apartment layout, paused frames of the stranger, and debated reality versus fabrication. His life had become public property, each frame judged, each fear scrutinized. And the stranger, watch. He moved through the footage unbothered, a silent predator now immortalized online. The lines between content, evidence, and fear were irreversibly blurred. Ethan tried to warn people, post disclaimers, and remove clips, but the internet moves faster than fear. Memes, reaction videos, and conspiracies exploded. Some glorified the stranger, calling him a guardian of secrets. Others demanded Ethan's arrest for negligence. Each notification, each share, intensified the sensation that the stranger was everywhere. The obsession that once controlled Ethan's life had now infected millions more, and the predator's reach had extended far beyond his apartment walls. By the end of the week, Ethan realized he was no longer just the creator. He was a character in a story, written by the stranger and amplified by the world. His obsession had spilled into the collective consciousness, every click, every share feeding a nightmare he could no longer contain. And as he stared at the glowing monitors, he understood the terrifying truth. Once viral, fear is immortal. And somewhere in the shadows, the stranger smiled. Or so it felt. As if the world itself had become his stage. The stranger was no longer just a shadow in the frame. He was a presence Ethan could feel. Doors creaked open without warning. Lights flickered with a rhythm that mimicked Ethan's own heartbeat. Every camera Ethan set up captured movements that defied logic. Doors opening from the inside, objects rearranging themselves as if mocking him. Fear had become a physical force, pressing against his chest, whispering that he was no longer the observer. He was the prey. Ethan attempted to confront the stranger directly, moving through the dark apartment with only a flashlight and his own rising panic. But every step revealed new impossibilities. The stranger appeared simultaneously in reflections Ethan had not yet reached. Ethan's mind screamed that it couldn't be real, that the footage had lied. But the sound of his own breathing, amplified in the tight corridors, confirmed the truth. Something intelligent, relentless, and unseen had invaded his life. He tried to escape, but the apartment had become a maze. Monitors displayed corridors he hadn't yet reached, doors opening before his eyes. The stranger's gaze followed him, relentlessly, unblinking, unyielding. Ethan realized that every camera he had set up had taught the stranger his habits, his patterns. The obsession that had once promised fame had instead provided a blueprint for terror. There was no hiding. There was only watching and being watched. Maya begged him to leave, to abandon the cameras, but Ethan couldn't. Every moment spent hiding was a moment the stranger grew stronger. And then, on one monitor, he saw it clearly. The stranger was not just following him, he was inside the very footage Ethan had been obsessively reviewing. Each playback frame showed the stranger anticipating Ethan's actions, predicting his movements before they happened. The house, the cameras, the footage, they were all part of the predator's game. Ethan's fear became suffocating. He realized the impossible truth. The stranger wasn't just in his apartment. He was inside the footage itself, inside the narrative Ethan had created. Every camera, every clip, every obsessive replay had trained the predator, teaching him, guiding him. And now, the predator had mastered the rules. The line between observer and observed shattered completely. There was no escape. There was only the watching and the being watched, endlessly intertwined. The world had seen it, or so we should know. I fry. News outlets broadcast Ethan's footage with headlines screaming, "Hidden camera horror" and "Apartment terror horror." Apartment terror captured live. Authorities questioned him. Neighbors whispered, and viewers dissected every frame online. Ethan felt the weight of millions of eyes watching. Some fascinated. Others angry. The stranger, once a private predator, had become a public specter, his presence amplified by every share. Fame had become a weapon, and Ethan's obsession was now a liability in a world that wanted answers. Authorities arrived with cameras of their own, trying to document the phenomenon. They found Ethan exhausted, hyper-alert, surrounded by his obsessive setup. Yet no matter how many officials watched, the stranger remained elusive. Every movement Ethan had learned to anticipate still defied logic. The experts debated, could it be supernatural, a skilled intruder, or something even stranger? Ethan realized that no one, not even the law, could contain what had already been unleashed. Social media reacted with frenzy. Clips, memes, and conspiracy threads multiplied like wildfire. Some claimed the stranger was a supernatural entity. Others insisted it was a digital deepfake. Ethan's identity was dissected and debated in every corner of the internet. Fame, obsession, and terror had collided, leaving Ethan trapped in a narrative he no longer controlled. He understood now. The world didn't want answers. They wanted spectacle. And the stranger was the star. Every day, the stranger became bolder. Ethan noticed new patterns in the footage. The figure mimicked his movements, anticipated his decisions, and even seemed to communicate silently through gestures. The world watched, fascinated, but Ethan realized with horror that the stranger was using him as a model. The viral obsession had trained a predator, and the predator now operated with unprecedented knowledge and confidence. Reality and performance were no longer distinguishable. By the week's end, Ethan was no longer just a content creator. He was a public obsession, a cautionary tale. Authorities monitored, news channels debated, and the internet churned with speculation. The stranger had become immortalized across screens and feeds, a predator trained by millions of viewers. Ethan's apartment, once a private space for creation, had become a stage for global fear. He realized, with a chilling clarity, that the moment obsession met virality, there could be no return. Only the endless cycle of watching and being watched. Ethan stared at the monitor's heart hammering. After weeks of paranoia, viral chaos, and relentless observation, the truth emerged. The stranger wasn't just following him. He was an echo of Ethan himself, a manifestation of his obsession amplified by the cameras. Every movement, every fear, every frantic replay had taught the predator to mimic, anticipate, and dominate. The horrifying realization hit. Ethan's own obsession had created the nightmare, and the world had only fueled it. He tried to shut it down, to erase every clip, unplug every camera, but the stranger persisted. Each device still displayed him moving independently, responding faster than Ethan could react. The footage, once a tool for fame, had become autonomous. The predator, a reflection of Ethan's own obsession, had learned to exist beyond the boundaries of his apartment, beyond the limitations of screen. The nightmare was no longer contained. It had grown beyond him. Maya pleaded with him to leave, but Ethan couldn't. Leaving meant admitting defeat, letting the obsession and the stranger win. Yet even in the panic, he noticed something terrifying. The stranger's gaze on the monitors seemed alive, aware of the viewers watching worldwide. The predator had evolved. It wasn't just observing Ethan anymore. It was observing everyone who had looked at the footage. Viral fear had become a contagion, and Ethan's creation had escaped control. In a final desperate act, Ethan attempted to destroy the system, smashing cameras, unplugging devices, tossing monitors to the floor. The stranger didn't flinch. Each action only seemed to strengthen him. his presence multiplying across every screen, every feed, every viewer's device. Ethan understood the ultimate horror. The predator had become immortalized by obsession, virality, and fear. He had trained it, nurtured it, and now the world fed it endlessly. And then, silence. Except for the screens, still glowing, still showing him. Ethan collapsed, exhausted, haunted by a truth he could never undo. The obsession that once promised fame had created a predator beyond his control. The stranger, a reflection of his own compulsion, now existed wherever fear was watched, wherever curiosity clicked play. Ethan had learned too late. Some things shouldn't be captured, some obsessions shouldn't be pursued, and once the world sees, the nightmare becomes eternal.